So, I'm homeless. Right? Or, as I like to put it, unhoused. I think that's the more responsible, kinder term for what that is. You may have noticed that I like to wear this shirt, this American Eagle shirt. And that was kind of my clue in previous videos, because I wear it in practically every video I've made, every short and every reel, that, so something is, something's up, right? Well, what could this even when I'm playing different characters, I still got the same shirt on. And there's a reason for that. And the reason is because I am unhoused. I live in my car. Oh, well, I try not to live in my car, but I do live in my car. But I had something kind of interesting happen to me just a couple days ago that I thought would be interesting to share in this new kind of story time segment I'm doing. So you probably saw the video title. It kind of, I wish I could say no spoilers. I wish I couldn't put that in the title, but in order for me to get engagement and get clicks and get views, it's a necessity, right? I can't just say story time, me in my car. You know what I mean? Clickbait exists for a reason. I think people forget that, and it's on some level everyone kind of has to do it. But yeah, I met a ghost. Is the right? That's the kind of short end of it. I kind of set the scene for you guys. Basically, where I live in Washington, there's this thing called squatters' rights. Well, that's a thing everywhere, really. But the specific, I guess, statute or rule in the Washington squatters' rights legal document or whatever is that if you inhabit a place for 7 years, an abandoned place, and you have to pay property taxes and everything like that, which is whatever. But if you inhabit a place for 7 years and it's just you and it's abandoned and you live there, you can't really leave it for that often, it becomes yours, right? You own that house. So I'm always looking, wherever I go, for any kind of abandoned building or structure that I can kind of make my home in. And even if I can't end up paying property taxes, it's just nice to have a shelter that's not a car, because a car is nice, but it leaves you kind of very vulnerable. There's no tinted windows on this thing. Even now I'm having to, look around just to make sure I don't get kicked out of, wherever I am. So I found this house. I think this was 2 days ago. And it was kind of your typical, older style house. I can't for these kind of ramshackle houses, you can't really tell how old they are. You just assume that they're in the general vicinity of 50 to 100 years, I guess. I can't really, I don't know. I'm not a history major, you know what I mean? But place was terrible. It was crap, right? But not so bad that it wasn't livable. It was still a shelter. And I think that's important, when you're looking for somewhere to stay, as long as there's what do they say, 4 walls and a roof, right? And this place had that. So, it was nighttime, obviously, because I kind of drive around during the day and kind of see what's going on, scrounge around a couple kind of hot spots, Winco, Walmart, that sort of situation. But it was nearing the end of the night, and I was thinking, well, it'd be nice if I could lay these old bones down for a bit, right? So I find this house, and it's abandoned, of course. So, and the other thing for squatters' rights too is you can't, if it's trespassing if there's a locked door and you break in. It's not trespassing, and it can lead to squatters' rights if it's an unlocked door and then you go in. So of course I try the door and it is unlocked, right? So far so good. So I move in there with my my things, and sorry if you can hear the rain. It's a rainy day. I thought I'd kind of add to the ambiance of what I'm putting out there. So I head in. I got some of my stuff with me, which is a bag of basic toiletries, this shirt, right? I got this coat too, and shorts and shoes, a pillow, that sort of thing. And I make my way inside, and right away I can tell that something is a little. Well, I won't say that, because that's probably hindsight speaking. If I said something was off, that's a little hyperbolic, because anytime you enter an abandoned space, things do feel kind of off. You know what I mean? I wouldn't call myself a superstitious person, but I am a little, no, I'm not going to do that. That's a Michael, I think, The Office situation. I'm not going to call myself superstitious, but if you go in anywhere alone that people have been in at one time, that it's meant to, for people to live in there, and you're just the only person in there, it does conjure up some feelings. You know what I mean? And I don't think I really believe in ghosts and the paranormal and that sort of a thing, but you do feel a lingering something. You know what I mean? So that's what I was feeling, which is, obviously no different than any other house or abandoned building I've ever been in. But, I just felt like I should point that out. Set the scene. Again, I'm a storyteller. This is filmmaking in a way. So I'm in the house, and I kind of start setting up. I go to the living room, I guess you'd call it, because that's sort of, well, usually you want to go where heat rises, but this was a one-story building, so I would assume anyway. I try to, the second floor is a little better potentially, but living room was good. Wasn't too bad in there. Some of the walls and some of the other rooms were a little, and you got to watch out for bugs and that sort of thing too. But the living room was pretty okay, and it was spacious, I guess. So I was kind of laying down my stuff. There was a really old couch there. I didn't go on the couch. Anywhere you go. When you think of an unhoused person, immediately what springs to mind is, images of kind of grime, of danger and that kind of thing. And that's totally overblown, because in reality, anyone can be unhoused. And that's just the truth. You meet people who are, I hate to say it, because that's how people think. People think of them as different than normal. But in reality, everyone is just a normal person that just had something good or something bad happen to them. And unhoused people are just really on the bad end of the spectrum. But it really, any career, any person, you never know, right? That's the story. That's just how it is. So I'm kind of dusting off the couch so I can maybe make my bed there, and I start to hear a little something. And I'm thinking, well, okay, it's just rats or roaches or whatever. And I'm like, business as usual, right? Start putting the bed together, and then kind of get my blankets on, and then I do hear from another room, because there's kind of a hallway that leads into 2 or I guess 3 rooms, because there's a bathroom, and then there's 2 rooms at the end of the hall. There's one on the left, one on the right. I would later find out, kind of giving away the gold here, but I hear what I thought sounded like, I don't know, like a wind chime or something, but more than just a rat. You know what I mean? Some kind of like movement in the house, and I was like, oh, that's interesting. It's dark, of course. So maybe there's a wind chime out there or somewhere, or I don't know, just the house settling noises, I guess. So I really don't care. I think nothing of it, right? So I'm getting on my phone, just kind of zoning out, trying to get myself to go to sleep. And I hear it again. And at this point, I'm like, that's odd. I really, like I mentioned earlier, in an abandoned place, you'll hear more things in general, right? Even if you're alone in your own house, right, that you live with people in, presumably, if you're alone, your ears will start to prick up, because you're like, oh my gosh, I'm on your fight or flight kicks in to a certain extent. Right, because you're like, I'm alone, I'm unguarded, no one is watching out for me, so I need to kind of get my senses into gear in case something happens. So I'm like, ooh, okay. And then I'm like, okay, I'm a little alert now, so I can't really go to bed, until I kind of figure out what's going on. That's another thing about me. I have to know the space to a certain extent. If I go in and I'm just dead tired, which I was, I could have just gone to sleep right then and there, because usually there's, you do a basic check to make sure there's nobody else squatting in there, right? And then no bugs, that kind of thing. You just go to bed. But if I'm alerted by something, then it will kind of bother me. So I get up, right, and I start kind of moving towards the hallway, and I feel like I hear it again. I don't know if I did the third time for sure, because I might have just been on crazy cuckoo pills. But I definitely felt like it came from. Well, the second time, and then the third time when I heard it, I thought it came from the left bedroom. So that's where I went into. And I go in there, and there's, it's a typical situation, cobwebs, kind of floorboards not maintained, moldy situation. I mean, it's like it's never as bad as what is that movie? The Conjuring, right? Where you have like these horrible decrepit spaces or whatever. It's never that bad, I mean it can be, but in this case it wasn't. It was just a little worse for wear. And I go into this room, and I can tell immediately that it's a girl's room, right? And it's not me being like, I'm not trying to be like, oh my gosh, there's a pink a circle with an arrow, or whatever. But there was some dolls and kind of an older flowery bedspread. I did notice that. So I mean, I guess it might not have been a girl's bedroom. Well, not to. Okay, well, I thought it was anyway, and I was like, oh, this is cute, whatever, dolls, and then. You might think like, oh, you could grab a doll and sell it or something like that, but usually it's you'll find that it's a difficult market, that particular market. So I'm like, oh, okay, little girl's room, okay, whatever. Then I'm like, okay, I'm sorry, I'll give you space. And I did actually say that because I'm not superstitious, but I do kind of like to have fun with it. You know what I mean? I feel like if you are going to engage with the paranormal, you do kind of have to have a sense of humor about it. Otherwise, you'll kind of get into the stereotype, of like, oh my gosh, this is like shocking and cold and chilling, and these ghosts are all malevolent. And I don't think they are. If ghosts do exist, I think they're just like people. They just linger. And they're maybe they're good, maybe they're bad, but well, no, they're not. They're just, if they're people, they're complex characters. You know what I mean? They're good and bad. So I'm like, oh my gosh, okay, hey, I'll leave you alone. Because I'm trying to kind of make peace, right? And I go back down the hall, and then I feel as I'm walking back, just a little tap, nothing crazy. It wasn't a grab or anything, but a tap on my shoulder. And I turn around again, nothing there. Right, so I'm like, oh, I have occasional. It's like anybody, right? Not phantom pain, but like you get a little sensation somewhere. I'm like, oh, maybe my shoulder is acting up. You know what I mean? Sorry. So I continue kind of walking towards the bed, and then I'm walking because I'm in the living room, right? And then I can swear, I feel like I see something in the kitchen, because there's kind of the living room and then the hall, and then in the, I don't know, would you never eat shredded wheat, right? So I guess in the shredded wheat, so in the west is like the hall, and the east is like the kitchen. The living room's in the middle, right? And then there's kind of like the threshold, I guess. And in the kitchen, I feel like I can see something. You know what I mean? Like some kind of, like not really like not a person, or not really not an animal, but like maybe like almost like an outline, you know what I mean? Or I don't know if that makes sense, like a shadow, right? I feel like I can see a shadow, and I'm like, oh, at this point, I don't think fear is totally kicked in, you know what I mean? But I'm starting to get a little more on edge, so obviously I head into the kitchen because it's right there, and of course there's nothing, right? Because that's the thing, you know what I mean? It's like, it would be one thing if I got tapped on the shoulder and then I turned around and there was something there, because that would be like, okay, I understand what's going on, you know what I mean? You lived here at some point. I mean, assuming this is supernatural, right? Again, I'm not superstitious, but if this were to happen, I'd be like, okay, you're a ghost, you know what I mean? Like, that's the one thing I don't really understand about ghosts as they're portrayed in media. They're always like, get out, and then they're kind of vague and abstract. If you really wanted someone to get out, you would make your presence known. You know what I mean? Because nothing hurts you. I mean, there's no, unless you're the Ghostbusters or something. As a ghost, you seem to be pretty much invincible, immortal. You know what I mean? If you wanted to keep your home alone, you would say, hey, you know what I mean? I'm here, so just leave. It wouldn't be this whole kind of like rigmarole of like, oh, I might be here, and then there's like oh my gosh, a chair moved. You know what I mean? Like at least that's what I would think. So I go in the kitchen, of course, nothing there, and I'm like, well, I'm kind of thinking of calling it. I'm like, I don't know. it's just a vibe, you know. Again, nothing really. I'm not totally fearful, not really, you know, in that mood, but more just like a general sense that like, well, I could just go somewhere else. The car is probably fine. I at least don't want to deal with any more of, even if it's not a ghost. I just don't. I can't sleep well with these kind of disturbances. You know what I mean? But I say, well, I say, well, you know, just give it one more shot, and then if something else happens, we can kind of move on. And then I mosey on over to the bed, and as I do that, as I'm walking out of the kitchen, I notice that my pillow's on the ground, right? And I'm like, because I know for sure I didn't do that. That's not one of those things where it's like, you know, you're like, okay, where did I put my phone? Oh my gosh, it's not in my pocket, and then it's like under my foot or whatever, or like I'm sitting on it. You're like, okay, I can see how I would have done that. The pillow specifically, there was no reason for me to move it. You know what I mean? So I see the pillow on the floor, and I'm like, and at this point, I'm kind of, because I'm like, well, again, I give it a couple more shots, and then we can go. But I'm like, again, I try to inject a little humor, and I'm like, yeah, nice one, you know, you know, no response, obviously. So then I put the pillow back on the bed. I put the covers on, and you know, I try to again. I'm scrolling again, on Instagram, usually Instagram and then TikTok. I try to set timers at night though, so I can, you know, unplug. I guess night light filters on. Bedtime mode is really helpful. I think if you want like a little bit of interaction with social media and whatnot at the end of the day, kind of cool down, but still you don't want to be like awakened by the blue light, right? So you know, I try again, and that goes pretty well, and I actually do I fall asleep, right? And you know, it's a little surprising for me because I'm like, usually it would take a little longer, but I fall asleep pretty quickly. And then I don't know exactly how much time had passed, but I wake up again, and then I wake up because I hear something, and this time it's more like a thud. You know what I mean? And I'm like, oh, okay, does that, you know, better out than in? You know what I mean? Because I'm like, well, I don't. That's kind of a dumb joke. I mean, you fart in your sleep, you do whatever in your sleep, you swallow spiders in your sleep. If you've seen that statistic, which I don't think that's actually true. And I hear a thump, and I'm like, ooh, you know, I'm like, ooh, you know. But I'm like, oh, maybe there's another squatter here or something, and then I kind of have to. So I get up, and I'm like, okay, you know, just, you know, kind of watch out what's going on. You know, I try to. You always try to be friendly, but we never really know. You know what I mean? So you just kind of have to be alert and awake at least, and in a position that you can handle whatever comes your way. So I kind of stand up, and I'm like, oh, yeah. And I hear another little lighter this time. This thump. I hear another thump. End of the hall. And I go back to the end of the hall, and I'm like, I feel like it definitely, again, came from the left bedroom, the girls' room. And so I go in there, and as far as I can tell, nothing's really changed except for, you know, I mentioned there's some dolls on like kind of on like a shelf-ish area. You know, there's like those like wood shelves built into the wall, you know, and there's a couple dolls on there, and it was just that two of the dolls had fallen over on their face, and I was like, oh, okay, you know, that's. Usually you might think of that and be like, oh my gosh, that's so, you know, freaky, but in reality that kind of thing happens, you know, pretty much every day in any kind of house, right? House settling noises, like I mentioned earlier, you know, things will just fall on your house, and maybe that is a ghost, but in reality it's just the nature of, you know, land moves. The tectonic plates under us are always shifting, you know, and houses are just, I mean, you think of a house as like this thing that's like eternal, right? Especially if you're a younger person and you're just kind of growing up, you're like, oh, the house. But in reality, it's just it's just wooden stakes driven into the ground, you know, a cement foundation or whatever, sure. But, you know, it's like a scarecrow. You can just, you know, knock it over. Something can, you know. Or, you know, I mean, that's a bad example, but you get what I mean. It's just a thing. It's just a thing that exists that man has made. It's not part of Earth. It's artificially made. You know what I mean? It's not just this thing that can be manipulated. It's more malleable, I think is what I'm trying to say than you think. So I'm like, okay, you know, that's odd, but again, It's probably a little, it's a little less disconcerting than the stuff that I kind of saw earlier, you know, the shadow and then the tapping. But then I do hear because I'm kind of picking up the dolls, you know, just to, whatever, you know, I'm kind of a neat freak in that way. I do hear, and this sounds like it's from behind me. I do hear you know, I think, well, I hate to say this because it does fuel the sort of mythos I was talking about earlier that I alluded to, but I hear a little girl's voice, I would presume. Yeah, I can't say for sure. Say, "Get out." And I feel, I mean, I could be wrong. It could have been something else. It could have been, you know, grab up or something like that. That's just what my mind went to, because that's the precedent that's been set. Get out, get out. And it feels a little more. It feels a little more. What's the word? It's a little more vocal presence. You know what I mean? A little more, I guess, resonant. And I'm like, I turn around. Of course, nobody's there. It's just, you know, how it is. And at that point, the specter of fear has kind of settled in. So I'm like, ooh, okay, yeah. I think, you know, it's time to check, please. You know, I did actually say that. I was like, okay, check, please. Sorry, you know, my bad. You know what I mean? Because at the same time, I'm picking up the dolls, so I'm like, you know, I mean, I feel like I'm kind of doing you a favor, unless they wanted them down. You know, and you know, just kind of because I know how this, again, I was thinking then, okay, get out. That is so cliche. That is so, you know, irritating that even happened. You know what I mean? So I whip out my phone real quick and I turn the flash on and I take a selfie. And I'm like, you know, hey, you know, I kind of do like a little peace sign and I'm like, hey, oh yeah, you probably saw I posted it on I think YouTube and Twitter. And I'm like, hey, you know, hanging out with you know, I forget the caption exact, hanging out with the Spectre bestie or something like, you know, me and bestie when, you know, there's a ghost in the house, you know what I mean? Come get your ghost, you know? And then I kind of tried to zoom in and see if there was anything in the background of the selfie, but I couldn't really see anything. I mean, maybe, you know, I don't have like Photoshop or whatever. I guess I could try on the phone, but that's kind of a nightmare. Any of those mobile app versions of desktop apps are usually just terrible when it comes to like video photography editing and whatnot. So I take that selfie and I move back to the bedroom and I'm like, well, you know, I think I checked the time and it's around 3:30-ish a.m. And I'm like, well, I got some good Z's in, so I can kind of knock the rest out in El Cardo, and then you know, head out before anybody really notices I'm there. Because that's the thing, if you sleep for like 8+ hours in a car just parked somewhere, you know, the odds are more likely that you'll be noticed by, you know, police, security, whatever. If you just sleep for a couple hours though, usually nobody really cares, especially that late. You know, that's not really. I mean, I guess it kind of depends on the area you're in when you do that, but the area I was in, nobody cares. So I kind of start to gather my stuff, and then you know, I notice as I'm leaving the house, because I gather my bed, I get up my stuff, and I'm like, you know, they say, well, you know, nice to meet you, you know, and then as I look kind of towards the threshold, I notice that there's a couple pictures on the wall that I hadn't seen. There's like a table by the door. And there's a little girl, and there's a kind of a man with a beard, and then you know, his wife, presumably his wife, in like an old timey dress. I mean, the photograph is old timey, it's in black and white. There's a little girl, a little boy, and then you know, the man and his wife. So I guess the other bedroom would have been the husband and wife's room, I would presume. I didn't go in there, but. You know, and then I take a picture of that because I'm just like, you know, kind of like for record keeping, I guess, kind of as a memento. I don't know. And then I leave the house. I get in the car, and you know, I'm doing okay. You know, good rest of the night, and then I move out. And then the next day, I wake up and you know, I drive around for a little bit, and then I stop for lunch at the Walmart. I was able to scrounge up a little, you know, because really, if you really want to look for loose change, the parking lot of a Winco Walmart is the place to go. You know, by because they'll just be coins literally on the ground, near the store, in the parking lot, wherever, and you can usually scrounge up at least enough for, like, I don't know, a Kit Kat or whatever. I think I got a couple Whoppers, if you know what those are. Those are like little, I don't know, chocolate malts or something. So I'm eating those, and I'm like, well, what happened there was kind of odd, right? I was like, that was a little interesting. So I'm gonna turn off the battery here. I like a little cold air in circulation, but I don't want to run out the battery, because then we're really in trouble, So then I open my my phone up, and I'm like, well, I just kind of, I'll use the picture, and I'll do like a reverse image search, and and then I try that, and nothing really comes up at first, because it's like 107797 tree bush, P, and I'm just saying, I'm like, usual suspects drawing from my environment here, but like 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 9 F7Q11 dot PNG or whatever, and you're like, okay, this is on, some like, just, I don't even know where those come from. They're just nothing, they're just empty links, basically. But then I scroll down for a while, and eventually I kind of find it's embedded in this article, right? And this is, I think it's like a Wayback Machine, and I forget what exactly that is, where it takes like a snapshot or whatever. And it was from like a digitized, how they like a digitized newspaper. How they do that, and then like some, because it was like, I forget exactly what town it was, or what town I was staying in. It was like Bellhop, the Bellhop Squire, and it was like from 19, I don't know, 21 or whatever it was. It was like a digitized version of a really old newspaper. You know what I mean? Scanned and uploaded for their archives. And it was like, I was like, oh, this is like, kind of interesting, because I'm not a history major, but some of that does kind of interest me, kind of, especially media collection and preservation, because I'm a film lover, and I love physical media. I'm a huge proponent of that. So I'm like, oh, this is kind of interesting, and then I see the picture, and there's a headline that's like and I have it, I should have written it down, but it was like, man kills wife and child in Bellhop or whatever, man, it was like viciously slays or something. No, it wasn't. They didn't quite use that kind of graphic language, but it was, man murders, maybe it was just murders wife and child in Bellhop, and I was like, oh, huh. So I'm reading this article. I start to read kind of what's going on, and this was, I guess this guy, because back then they didn't have the kind of research methodology that we had, but he was, he was a little, I don't know, I guess that I would presume unstable, right? He was a steel mill worker, and I mean, the working conditions back then, back in ye olden day, I would presume anyway, whenever the Industrial Revolution started, are just abysmal. I mean, I feel like I remember in history class, it was like you work like 100 hours a week, or whatever, something crazy like that. And I don't know if that's what he did, but they were like, he was a steel mill worker, and he has a very, very stressful occupation. But he had moved to Bellhop with his wife and their young daughter, and they were kind of not a very quiet family, not really very neighborly, as I think the wordage used there, because they had some, back in the day, the neighborhood was a community. Now it's just, you just stay in your house and hope you never ever see anyone. I mean, I would presume, again, for me, the neighborhood is kind of more of a community, but it's a little different, I guess. They were not neighborly people, I guess, is the general gist of things. And I think there was not an interview, but some kind of blurb from his boss at the steel mill. It was like, he was a fine worker, but very, very, reserved, and he was a little, I guess, stoic, I guess. And they were like, well, I mean, that was the general gist of it, right? That's because that's whatever. I guess the daughter, they had like a teacher be like, oh, she would draw these kind of weird pictures, and then it'd be like, her dad is like, he's like breaking a chair over a table or something like that. Something like violent imagery, I guess. And then they were like, it's kind of a outsider situation, because I feel like that plays into it too, kind of like an outsider bias, I guess you might call that, where you kind of are set with your certain group of people that and have come to be comfortable with, and then a new party moves in and you're like, oh, no matter who they are, really. But yeah, I guess so. He had a saw at home, because he was also kind of like I guess a woodworker. He would make like little wood sculptures, and I think he helps make like a pagoda, or not a pagoda, but what do you call that? That kind of thing that's like outdoors. Ron Swanson from Parks and Rec makes one, where it's like a little sculpt, like not a. It's like a little like multi-faceted entrance thing that you can it's like a building with many entrances. That's like a small thing with a roof that you can it's in the middle of like a park or something. I guess he made that, and he had like some woodworking tools at home. He had a saw, and I guess a handsaw. And then I guess what he did is I won't get graphic details. You can kind of imagine what happened. And then I guess that was done because again, as a quiet guy, I guess it wasn't, I won't say, that's kind of speculation on my part, but he did it while they were sleeping. And then I guess he just disappeared is the gist of things. I tried to look into like if they ever found him, and I didn't really see anything. But so that was kind of it. And then I finished reading the article, and I was like, that's wow. I will admit I kind of skipped around a little bit because I was getting bored. If there's why my recollection might not be exactly precise. And because I mean, reading is one thing, but reading like a newspaper, and it's like older language too, so they're like, ye old townsfolk of Bellhop, and the mysterious Mr. No, it was I do remember the name of the family. I think it was the Rake family. Mr. the intrepid, or mysterious Mr. Rakes, and you're like, okay, when do we get to Subway Surfers? But I was just curious, so I kind of skimmed it. But yeah, so I finished the article, and I was like, oh, that's interesting. There was one more thing though in the article I forgot to mention, which was that I guess because I was like, well, is there anything about the dolls? You know what I mean? Because it was like that kind of stuck with me, for obvious reasons. The dolls fell on the floor, and there was something about I guess the girl would hand make dolls, and kind of do like a show for show and tell. She would like show up with dolls of like her classmates or a teacher, and her dad or something like that. And I was like, oh, that's kind of interesting. And, I guess according to the teacher, it was like a little. They didn't use the word freaked them out, but it was unsettling, is I think the expression used there. It's unusual for a child to do that. And then that's when I was reading that, it hit me. I was like, oh, wait a minute. I feel like when she was like, oh, here's the doll and then the picture of the guy, I was like, wait a minute. I feel like I saw that in the room, because I was it was pretty fast, when I just set the dolls up and then I heard, get out. But I was like, wait a minute. Now that I think about it, the two dolls that were there that I had seen on the floor and I can't say for sure. One of them was a female doll, which I guess could have been, any teacher or classmate, whatever. Mom, right? That's what I was thinking. The other was definitely a male doll with a beard. And I was like, I think at the time I was like, oh, that's nice craftsmanship on these dolls. You know what I mean? Well, I mean, the beard was, at least. The rest of the features were a little, off. Because I guess, later find out a 7-year-old made it or whatever. And then I was like, oh, okay, so that's I was like that. I was convinced that was like the husband doll, At least I think I would be shocked if it was anybody else. So husband and wife together, dolls, fall over, right? You know what I mean? So I'm just saying, maybe it wasn't all the steel mill. You know what I mean? Maybe there was a little more interpersonal kind of drama going on there, interpersonal conflict going on there. I mean, well, he did kill them. Other than that, I mean, you know. But yeah, I finished reading the article, finished up lunch, and you know, really, I haven't really thought about it since. Well, I guess until now. So yeah, I felt like I could share that with you guys. Hopefully, found some of that sort of interesting. I might go back just to kind of see what's up. You know, is it just to check for sure if that was the actual doll there? You know, if that was the husband and wife. You know, see if I can get some more details. Maybe even go into the husband's room. Although, you know, the little girl spirit was probably. I mean, well, presumably, if she exists, you know, it seemed pretty. Not. I mean, you know, get out. Saying get out when there's a potential murderous spirit in there. To me, that seems kind of, you know, not mean. Get out in like a, you know, hey, there's a flash flood warning. Get out. You know, not like you were gonna get, you know, possessed by Satan, you know, if you stay in this house. So yeah, I might go back and see, you know, and again, if there's nothing there, great, because that's, you know, it's not the greatest house in the world, but if I can stay there for 7 years, that's, you know, that's cha-ching in my books. So yeah, guess that's it. Thank you guys for watching.